BTS did not just reference history, they walked into Black American history and got a key part of it wrong. So let's get this straight. Their Aryong animation trailer was inspired by a real story. In 1896, seven Korean students were connected to Howard University, and later, early recordings of Aryong were made in Washington, D.C., so that part is very real. But what is also very real is what Howard University actually represents. Howard was founded in 1867, right after the Civil War, specifically to educate Black Americans who had been denied access to education in this country. HBCUs exist because Black students were excluded from white institutions. That is not opinion, that is documented history. And in 1896, the same year tied to this story, the Supreme Court upheld segregation in Plessy versus Ferguson, legally enforcing a system that kept Black and white people separate under so called separate but equal. So when you take Howard University in that time period and visually center white people in the audience, like they did in that trailer, you are not just being creative, you are distorting the historical context of a Black institution that existed because of segregation. So now let's be precise so nobody tries to twist this. Yes, Howard was technically open to all races, and there were white individuals present at times. That part is true, but that does not change the core truth. Howard was a historically Black institution built in response to systemic exclusion. So when the visual storytelling shifts that reality into something that looks racially neutral or white centered, it erases the very reason Howard existed in the first place. So that is what people mean when they say whitewashing. And the other issue people need to stop dancing around is accountability. I do not care who animated it. If the group BTS is attached to a project that is grounded in real history, then they share responsibility for how that history is portrayed. You do not get to benefit from the aesthetic of Black history while ignoring the accuracy of it. Fans defending this are missing the point. This is not about attacking BTS. This is about respecting Black institutions and telling the truth when you use them in your art. Because if you're going to pull from real history, then you need to get the history right.
Why is everyone so shocked that BTS depicted Howard University as a predominantly white school? Yeah, we know Howard University is a HBCU, but are we forgetting that K-pop is literally what happens when you take Black art and remove the Black to make it more palatable? Are we forgetting that K-pop is just what happens when you want to sound like Black people, but you're also racist? For decades, they've been excluding Black people from K-pop, and you thought that was going to stop at an HBCU? No, but in all actuality, this is much sadder than you think it is. The Korean students that attended Howard University did so because they had nowhere else to go. While every other school in the nation maintained racial barriers, Howard University accepted them. Black people accepted them. They weren't serving the racial hierarchy, they were serving the pursuit of knowledge. Instead of just straight up honoring Howard University and the HBCU and Black people that accepted them with open arms, they decided to make the very deliberate decision to depict Howard University as a predominantly white school. Problematic? Of fucking course. But I also saw this shit coming. Because again, that's all K-pop is. Black art minus the Blackness, minus the Black people. You thought removing the Black people was gonna stop right here for this animation? No, they don't like us. They just want to sound like us, look like us, act like us, dress like us, and so on and so forth. K-pop thrived and grew to what it is today because there's a market for Black art minus the Black people. And as long as that market exists, we're going to keep running into situations like this. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Benny, and if you're new here, this is where we break down trending topics, culture, and real conversation that matters. So today's topic is a powerful one and emotional, and honestly, it's a conversation that we all need to have. So here is the situation. BTS released an animated trailer inspired by real historical events. So the story is focused on Korean students studying at Howard University in 1896. Now, on the surface, the story sounds like a powerful one, but viewers quickly noticed something was off. So the university was shown with a mostly white students population, and that raised a lot of questions. So let's talk about why this matters. So Howard University is a historically black college and community. So these schools weren't just created randomly. They were created because black people were excluded from the white institutions. That's what we call segregation. So they were created and became safe spaces, center of education, and symbols of resilience. Now imagine telling a story about that space, but removing the very people it was built for. And that's why critics are calling this whitewashing, because it doesn't just look inaccurate, but it changes the meaning of history. Here is where things get even more interesting. So back in 1896, Korean students actually studied at the Howard University. And here is the key point. They were welcomed at the Howard University at that time when they were being rejected elsewhere. So that means black institutions actually played a role in supporting the other marginalized communities, and that's not just history. That's what we call solidarity. And critics are saying the animation didn't capture that. So now let's zoom it out because this is not just about one video. This taps into a bigger conversations about K-pop and black culture. So a lot of people argue that the K-pop industry is heavily influenced by by the black culture, and that's true. Because let's talk about hip hop, R&B, dance styles, fashion trends, talk about the hairstyle, and even the language. And again, the culture exchange isn't the problem. The issue is what happens next. So critics are saying the industry often uses these elements, but it doesn't always create it or represent black people properly. Some are even describing it as using the culture without the people, and that's where the tension is coming from. So now the question is, did the BTS respond? And they actually released a statement saying the animation may deviate from actual historical events and shouldn't be taken as a formal representation of history. In simple terms, they called it creative storytelling. But for many people, that response didn't feel like enough. And here is why, because the story is based on real history, man. So the visual still sends a strong message, and there was no direct apology or correction. So critics are asking, why tell a real story but change the reality? Why not represent the people who were actually there? Some are even calling for animation to be redone or clarified. Because at the end of the day, this is bigger than the BTS. It's about history, it's about respect, and it's about responsibility. So, because when you have a global influence like the BTS, the stories you tell really matters. So, the real question is, can you celebrate a culture while misquoting its history? That's what people are debating right now. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think this was just a creative freedom? Do you and please share your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.